welcome to our deep dive into Damien Chazelle's Babylon. We're going like beyond the usual reviews and hot takes here.
Right.
You know, you've provided some really insightful essays and analyses and even a list of similar movies.
Yeah.
So, get ready because we're about to unpack the wild world of Babylon, its themes, and why this film is stirring up so much debate.
I think what's interesting about Babylon is that it's not just like a glitzy period piece.
Right.
It's sparked all sorts of debate about whether it celebrates or condemns Hollywood, a question we'll be exploring today.
Yeah.
And one of the essays you've shared actually compares the transition from silent films to talkies, which is the backdrop of the film,
right.
to the arrival of the internet.
Wow.
Both moments represent massive technological and cultural shifts, and both forced entire industries to adapt or become obsolete.
And Babylon definitely does not shy away from showing the chaos of that shift, right? I mean, the film opens with a scene of absolute mayhem. They're trying to get this giant elephant up a hill for a party.
Oh, yeah.
And things go hilariously wrong.
It's an unforgettable image, and one of the essays argues that it perfectly encapsulates the film's central themes.
Really?
That elephant become a symbol of Hollywood's out-of-control ambition and excess, and it foreshadows the inevitable downfall that comes with such a wild ride.
So right from the start, Chazelle is setting the tone for a film that's going to be excessive, over the top.
Yes.
Maybe even a little unhinged.
Exactly. And that tone carries through to the characters, particularly Nellie Leroy, played by Margot Robbie.
Oh, she's like a force of nature, this aspiring actress who embodies the energy of the Roaring Twenties.
Yes.
One review called her a self-destructive star, which feels pretty accurate.
Yeah, she's incredibly talented and ambitious, but she's also consumed by the allure of fame and the fast-paced lifestyle of the era.
Right.
The film explores the archetype of the tragic news and Nellie's story, while captivating, ultimately becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition.
It's almost like she gets swallowed whole by the very system that promises to make her a star.
Yeah.
But then you've got Brad Pitt playing Jack Conrad, who is already a huge star at the beginning of the film.
Right, he represents the old guard of Hollywood, the silent film icons who suddenly find themselves struggling to stay relevant as the industry evolves.
Yeah, his fear of obsolescence is palpable, and it's a feeling that I think a lot of people can relate to, even outside of Hollywood.
Absolutely. The essay that focused on Jack's character argued that he embodies this universal anxiety about being left behind as the world changes around you. And Brad Pitt captures that melancholy so perfectly. It's in his eyes, his posture, every gesture.
Then we have Manny Torres, played by Diego Calva, who comes into this crazy world as a wide-eyed outsider. He kind of serves as our entry point into the story.
He's ambitious, but he's also initially more grounded than the other characters. He starts as an assistant and quickly gets pulled into the whirlwind of Hollywood, witnessing both its magic and its dark beer belly.
And as Manny's journey unfolds, it seems like his moral compass starts to get a little distorted.
Exactly. He's initially portrayed as the moral compass of the film, but as he gets deeper into the industry, he makes compromises that chip away at his innocence.
Right.
And that's where his story becomes a cautionary tale, too. He shows us how even those with good intentions can get corrupted by the allure of power and success in Hollywood.
So we've got these really compelling characters who are all on these collision courses with fate. But the film doesn't just tell their stories through dialogue and plot.
Right. Babylon is also visually stunning and uses a lot of symbolism to reinforce its themes. One essay you shared focused on the recurring motif of mirrors and reflections.
Oh yes, the film is filled with mirrors. They're everywhere, from dressing rooms to lavish parties.
And that's no accident. Hollywood is all about creating illusions, and the mirrors reflect that literally, but they also reflect the characters' fragmented identities and their struggles with self-deception.
Wow.
It's a clever visual metaphor that adds another layer of depth to the storytelling.
And then there's the way Chazelle uses color. The film is so vibrant, but the colors are clearly very intentional. We see a lot of reds, gold, and blues.
You're right. The colors aren't just there for aesthetics. They actually function as a kind of visual language. One of the essays you shared pointed out how Chazelle uses red to represent passion, danger, and even the violence that simmers beneath the surface of this world. Gold, of course, symbolizes the wealth and allure of Hollywood.
Right.
But it also hints at the moral decay that often comes with it.
And then you've got the blues, which feel a lot more melancholic.
Exactly. The blues often appear in moments of introspection or when characters are grappling with loss or disillusionment. It's like Chazelle is using these colors to foreshadow the inevitable crash that's coming for these characters and for this era of Hollywood as a whole.
So the film is visually stunning, but it also makes you think about the dark side of Hollywood, the price of fame and the sacrifices people make for their art.
Right. And that brings us to this interesting duality that a lot of critics have pointed out. Babylon has been called both a love letter and a eulogy to Hollywood.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like it celebrates the creative energy and the sheer spectacle of filmmaking,
Right.
but it also exposes the exploitation and the moral compromises that often come with it.
And some of the sources you shared argue that the film is ultimately a cautionary tale warning us about the dangers of getting too caught up in the pursuit of fame and fortune.
It's interesting because the film doesn't just focus on the white heterosexual stars of the era. We also see characters like Lady Fei Zhu, played by Lee Jun Lee, who's this amazing cabaret singer, but she faces a lot of discrimination because she's a queer woman.
That's a really important point. Babylon doesn't shy away from showing how Hollywood, for all its glamour, has a history of marginalizing those who don't fit the traditional mold. And even though the film is set in the 1920s, it raises questions about how much has really changed in terms of representation and inclusion in the industry.
It's like those stories from the past are still relevant today, and they make you wonder if Hollywood has truly reckoned with its history of exclusion.
Right. And the film doesn't offer easy answers. It simply presents these stories alongside the stories of the more privileged characters, forcing us to consider the complexities of Hollywood's past and present.
It's definitely a film that sparks a lot of conversations, and that's what I love about these deep dives. We get to explore all those different layers and interpretations.
And speaking of exploration, you provided a fantastic list of films that complement Babylon and delve into similar themes. For example, there's Singing in the Rain.
Oh, I love that movie. It's also about the transition from silent films to talkies, but it takes a much lighter, more comedic approach. I remember watching it as a kid and being completely captivated by the music and the dancing.
It's a classic for a reason, and watching it alongside Babylon provides a fascinating contrast. It shows how the same historical event can be interpreted in very different ways. Singin' in the Rain celebrates the magic of Hollywood and the resilience of the human spirit, while Babylon takes a more cynical, even tragic view of the same era.
And then there's Boogie Nights, which explores the rise and fall of the porn industry in the 1970s.
Another film that explores the themes of ambition excess and the dark side of fame. Paul Thomas Anderson, the director, is known for his complex characters and his unflinching look at the underbelly of American culture. It's a film that stays with you long after you've seen it.
And for those who enjoy mind-bending cinema, there's Mulholland Drive, David Lynch's masterpiece of surrealism.
That's a great recommendation for anyone who wants to explore the darker, more psychological aspects of Hollywood. Lynch, like Chazelle, is a master of using symbolism and dreamlike imagery to create a sense of unease and ambiguity.
It's a film that really gets under your skin and makes you question everything you see.
It challenges our perceptions of reality and reminds us that the line between dreams and nightmares can be very thin, especially in a place like Hollywood.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the characters, the themes, the symbolism, and even connected it to other films.
But there's one final thought I want to leave you with. Remember that montage at the end of Babylon, the one that jumps through different eras of cinema?
Yes, it's like a whirlwind tour of film history, from silent films to talkies to color to CGI and everything in between.
It's a really powerful sequence, and one of the essays you shared argues that it's not just a celebration of film history, but also a challenge to the viewer.
Yeah, it's like Chazelle is asking us, what's next?
Exactly. It's like he's saying, look how far cinema has come, but the journey isn't over. He leaves us with this open-ended question about the future of film and our role in shaping that future.
So it's not just a nostalgic look back at the past. It's also prompting us to think about what kind of stories we want to see on screen in the years to come.
Precisely. And that essay argued that the montage is particularly relevant for us today as we're navigating this rapidly evolving media landscape. We have streaming services, virtual reality, and all these new ways of experiencing stories. So it's a really exciting time to be a film lover, but it also raises questions about what cinema will even look like in the future.
It makes you wonder if we're on the cusp of another major transformation, like the shift from silent films to talkies that the film portrays. And if so, what will that mean for filmmakers, for audiences, for the art form itself?
It's definitely something to ponder. What Babylon highlights so well is that these periods of transition can be both exhilarating and terrifying. They can lead to incredible innovation and creativity, but they can also be disruptive and disorienting.
And that ties back to one of the key questions that we've been exploring throughout this deep dive. Is Babylon a celebration or a condemnation of Hollywood?
That's the brilliance of the film. It doesn't offer a simple answer. It embraces the beauty, the artistry, and the power of cinema, but it also doesn't shy away from the darkness, the exploitation, and the heartbreak that often come with it.
So maybe it's both a love letter and a warning. It's acknowledging the magic of movies, while also reminding us that Hollywood is ultimately a business and industry with its own set of rules and its own casualties.
And ultimately, I think that ambiguity is what makes Babylon such a compelling and thought-provoking film. It leaves us with more questions than answers, and it invites us to engage in these conversations about the past, present, and future of cinema.
And for our listener, it sounds like you've provided them with plenty of food for thought, not just about Babylon, but about the nature of art ambition and the human condition, plus a whole list of other films to add to their watch list.
Exactly. If any of the themes we've discussed today resonated with you, I encourage you to check out those recommendations. Each of those films offers a unique perspective on these ideas, and they can help broaden your understanding of cinema's power and complexity. It's a great way to continue your own deep dive into these topics.
So to wrap up, Babylon is a film that lingers in your mind long after you've seen it. It's a wild ride, a visual feast, and a story that makes you think about the choices we make, the dreams we chase, and the legacies we leave behind.
And perhaps the most important takeaway is that film, like life, is full of contradictions. It can be both beautiful and brutal, inspiring and disillusioning. And it's up to each of us to decide how we want to engage with it and what meaning we want to extract from it.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Babylon. It's been a pleasure exploring this film with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listener, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.